Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Thursday of the week. It is Good Friday tomorrow, so we won't have classes. I know this is a difficult time for many of you, especially those of you who didn't make it in the last week or so of school to either get booklets or to grab the appropriate software that you needed. So I guess we'll just have to do what you can do. There is software available, not the graphing calculator, but you can download Desmos. Perhaps next week I will one of the classes to alternate means of doing your applied math without the graphing calculator app. I know a few of you did get it though, so for those of you who did get it and are following along, I guess I'll just encourage you to ask me questions. If you hop onto the live chat, you can ask questions during the live feed. I've also posted information on the blog about how to get a hold of me during my resource period from 10 to 11. There's a Google Meet link that I sent there, and from 10 to 11 every school day I'll be available for math help. So if you have questions about the graphing calculator or doing your math with the technology, please let me know through that Google Meet time. So yesterday we actually started with the graphing calculator, and that was a lot to take in. I asked you to work on example. So I think what I'll do is I'll work through answer 2 and 3 today. So just as a refresh, we started using the graphing calculator to make sense of data. It's not enough just to be given a table of values, but we want to understand and make sense of what the table represents. In our first example, we were talking about the square footage of a house and its price. Now, usually what happens is the larger the home, the more expensive it is. But when we have a table of values, it only gives us data on a certain number of items. Like for here, it only gave me data. My problem could be, I don't just want to have an idea of what house prices are for 5 houses. I actually want to know the price for any house. And if we just want a general knowledge about this whole situation, the whole situation about price of houses, what we want is we want to develop a math equation, right? That's what life really is all about. We're developing equations that work. That's what they're doing right now with this virus, right? They're spitting a lot of data into formulas and trying to figure out what would work. And they're also using data to track the spread of the virus, right? And they're using equations. Everything that we really do in our life comes from a math equation, or that we study. And that's how our life has evolved too, right? By studying data. So once again, we use this data, we plug it into the calculator, out pops an equation. From that equation, I can answer limitless questions about this particular situation. Once I have the equation, you could give me any size of house and I could spit out the price for you, right? So that's really what it's all about. Page 13 is very important, right? It lists all the steps of how to use the TI-84, whether you're using your on-screen calculator app or the downloadable one from your phone. I've had a couple people contacting me saying that they didn't get any info before they didn't come to school on those last days and get the stuff they needed. So I'm kind of trying to figure out, I'll do a little exploring this weekend and see if I can download a file for you. The files that I need are all at school. So I'm trying to download them remotely, and it's becoming a little bit of a problem, but I'll work on it over this long weekend, and hopefully I'll have something posted to the blog that will address the issues that those people who don't have technology are facing, and hopefully we can come up with a solution. In the meantime, I'm going to go through today, and I'm just going to keep working through my example with my graphing calculator, right? The calculator that we would normally be using in school, the TI-84s, okay? So our calculators look like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do example 2 and 3 because that is what I had assigned to you to try and work through. So let's see how you did, because you don't have the answers for these, because I want to give you the answers. So on page 14, this is page 14, example 2. Temperatures can be measured in degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit. A temperature of 32 Fahrenheit is equal to a temperature of 0 degrees Celsius. Okay, I don't know if you knew that, but that's true. The table shows how some temperatures in Fahrenheit and Celsius compare. So determine the regression equation for the data. That means we're putting the data into the calculator and choosing the right equation and then spitting out the equation. So this is my X list 2. How do we do that? Well, the first thing we do, we turn our calculator on, right? And I got to clear all my data. I had some old stuff that I was working on. So I go second plus sign. I choose number 7, then number 1, then number 2, and it's cleared for me. And it says right here, RAM cleared. Okay, so I just clear the screen again. And now I've got a clean slate and I can just start entering my data in. If you remember from yesterday, and these notes are all in your booklet, they're in this book on the previous page, but they're also all on my previous video. We press Stat, because this is a list of statistics, right? And edit. Edit means we're just entering the data in. So it's this easy. I just enter all my X values in first. And I hop over. I enter my Y values in. Okay. Once I've entered those in, I can clear out of here. And you can either just clear... you can't, when you press clear, nothing happens, right? So this time you're going to have to use second mode. Quit, like you want to quit this application. Okay, so quit that. Now, if I press graph right now, I'm not going to see anything, right? So what we've been doing is we've been turning our stat plot on, just right above the Y equals screen. Okay, and we're just turning it from off to on. So I just have to do a double click, okay? And then I just go second quit. Now, I also need to do something else. So the first things we need to do after we after we enter our data in and turn stat plot on is I need to adjust my windows. So I'm just going to write little notes down, okay? So enter data. Use stat. So press your stat key and then edit. I'm going to say turn stat plot on. Okay, and then I'm going to press second Y equals. Okay, so the second and then the Y equals button. And then what we're going to do is adjust the X min, X max, Y min, Y max. Remember, we have to do that, and that's under Windows. And I've said this a few times, and I'll keep saying it every day till you hear it in your sleep. All the graphing stuff's in this top row that we need, right? Or most of it after we enter our data in, right? But when we want to adjust the graph stuff, it's all here. All right, so I go to Windows and I can see that the default settings are just up to 10s. Most of the data that we study in this class are not go far past 10, right? So I'm going to look here. Now, another thing about our data is in applied math, most of our data is in quadrant 1, right? It's positive numbers, and sure enough, this is positive as well. So let's look for my X min. This is the lowest, this is the smallest, right? This is the smallest, that's the minimum value. And then the largest value is this one, that's the max. Okay, well, I don't want to just use those for X min and X max. I usually use something a little bigger, right? So I'm going to do what I've always been doing. I'm going to put my X min and my X max on this column. I think I might start at 0 even. I want 0 for X. I always like using 0 if I can. And then let's see, X max, let's go to, I don't know, how about 230? Okay, I always go a little higher, a little lower, if I can. Y min, Y max. Okay, here's my lowest value for Y, my highest value for Y. So then my Y min, I'm going to keep at 0, which I like using zeros. And I think I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to go 120. Okay. Now you might have chosen different X mins, maxes and mins for if you did this on your own at home. That's okay. We'll get the same. The windows aren't so important. The windows are just to make sure you can see all the data. If I didn't adjust these numbers, I wouldn't see in all my data because the window settings would be too small for the data I was given. So I decided on 0 to 30, and all I do is change my X min, X max, Y min, Y max. Now when I press graph, I'll see all my dots, right? And I should see 4 of them, and I only see 3. So I'm wondering if one of them is obscured. Let me just check my data again. 1, 2, 3, 4, the 32. I think one of them's hidden down here. Okay, so let's try to, once I have my data plotted, okay, so I've done all that. Now it says determine the regression equation. Okay, so go through the steps on page 13, okay, just previous, and I'll go through them here. I use stat again because we're playing with our statistical data, right? But I don't want to edit anymore. I've already edited, I've already entered in. So I'm going to use the cursor arrow to calculate. This is a linear regression. I'm just going to go back to my graph for a second. I'll redo this. See how I want to see that linear regression. So it's moving up in a linear pattern. So that tells me it's a straight line. Okay, so I'm going to go back to stat calc. I'm going to choose number 4. That stands for linear. So I'm just going to hit number 4 and enter. And now I have this familiar screen. They're just double checking. Yes, our X values are in list 1 and our Y values are list 2. We don't have a frequency list. So I stop here at storing. This is going to store all my data, and it's going to take my data. Not only is it going to store it, but it's going to create a line for us. Okay, and once we have a line, it's going to be in y equals mx plus b form, and it's going to be that regression equation, right? It's going to give us the regression equation. So I stop here and I press vars, y vars. It's a linear function, and I'm going to paste it into y equals. And then I'm going to move down to calculate and calculate it for me. And sure enough, I have y equals ax plus b. A is 0.55, b is negative 0.77. And all I do is substitute those values into this equation, right? So I'm going to actually record my regression equation properly. Y equals, A is 0.55 repeating. So 0.55x. Notice that I just substitute these values in where A and B is. Everything else stays the same. Plus negative 17.78. Okay. Now, I don't really need this plus minus. As we learned in our preliminary units, it would actually be, this whole equation, would be y equals 0.55x plus minus a positive 1, y equals 0.55x minus 17.78. Okay? So hopefully you got that. Now, the beauty is, if you look at this, this is the important thing. When I press my y equals screen, all the data was placed into a y equals screen. And the most important thing is when I press graph, not only do I have the points plotted, but I have the line running through it. When I get the line running through it, that's the model. That will allow me to answer any other question that you could ever throw at me about temperature. Because once again, if you're just giving me the data, these 4 points, and if I just left with the scatter plot, I would just have 4 points plotted, and all I would know is information about those 4 points. Once I have the line coming through the data, I can answer any other question in the world that you could ask me about temperature and degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. Which brings us to use the regression equation to determine the temperature in Celsius when it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so when X is 10, now yesterday I said we could use trace, right? And I could just move it up and down my, I have to make sure I'm on my Y equals. I can just move up and down my line till I find an X value of 10. But that actually takes a while and it's a bit clumsy and I don't always get, you can see my graph hops from 9.7 to 12. So I don't actually get 10 exactly. So that's a bit of a problem. I can only approximate. The best way to do it is second trace, press number 1, and it asks you what you want your X to be. So we wanted our X to be 10. Just put a 10 in and hit enter. Okay, and we get negative 12.22. Let's see if the light makes a difference, okay? All right, so I'm going to record those. So we're going to do, I'm going to say press second trace. Number 1, and then X equals 10, and you get Y equals negative 12.22. So if X is 10, that means degrees Celsius is negative 0.22. So I'm going to say when it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit, right? When X is 10, it's negative 12.22 degrees Celsius. Now what I've done here by putting these steps, like second trace number 1, that's showing your work in applied math. We don't have a lot of pen and paper work in applied, so there aren't a lot of calculations that we're doing in pen and paper anymore. We're doing them all with the calculator. So that's how I show my work in applied math. All right. Let's try the next example. So you have these done for you. A rental company charges a flat fee of $150 and an additional $250 per kilometer driven. This shows the cost of some rentals. Okay, determine the equation. So I know what I have to do, but you can see how these numbers are completely different. So it's very important we do a second plus sign, number 7, number 1, number 2. Okay, and then everything's cleared again. You can see when everything's cleared, sorry, I've been marking my calculator up. When I press graph, you see nothing there, right? And there's nothing in Y equals, and there's nothing in the stat edit, right? It cleans everything out. Whoops, sorry about that. Do that again. There's no graph anymore. Okay. There's no Y equals. There's nothing in the lists, right? Because we've cleared everything out, which is what you want. Okay, so I'm going to put my new data in. So stat edit, I'm going to put my new set of data in, 0, 30, 58, 90. Then I'm going to put 150, 225, 295, 375. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn my stat plot on just so I can see the data when it's plotted. So I'm going to turn my stat plot on, okay? And then I'm going to quit. And then I have to adjust my windows again, right? So I think here, if I look, and again, all our windows can be slightly different. We don't have to be identical, but whenever I can use zeros, I do. So I'm going to say for this one, I'm going to say X min is 0. And I'm going to say my X max is I think 100 looks okay, right, from this data? Okay. And then I have the cost. Well, let's see. My Y-min, I guess it could be $100. And my Y-max is, I don't know, let's say 400. Okay. So window, 0, 100, and then 100, 400. Okay, so I should see my data points. And I always, sometimes that fourth point is lost, right? Because it's probably right on this thick bar. That's why sometimes you don't see that fourth point. All right, remember what to do now? So it says determine the regression equation for the data. So the steps would be the same, right? We entered our data in, we turned Steplet on, adjusted windows, go through the steps on page 13, and I'll go through them slowly here. So once I have all my data entered in, my stat plot is on, I go stat calc. It's a linear regression, number 4, okay? L1, L2, yep, I just go by the frequency. Now I stop and I press vars, Y vars, and then I just hit enter, 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 okay? And see how the Y, this used to be blank, and now you've entered an equation into Y1. So then I'm just gonna move down to calculate. This is kind of a nice clean little equation. My A value is 2.5, my B is 150. It's up to you. This is your job. You have to substitute these values in the right spot. So for this question, our regression equation becomes y equals 2.5x plus 150, okay? I'm using this equation for the pattern. I'm substituting A for 2.5 and B for 150. And then that's what I get. That's my equation. So it's funny that this answer looks so simple, right? But there was a lot of work that we took to get this answer. Now, once I have my regression equation, I can answer any other question at all, right? Because it's taken 4 points. Now, granted, that's not a lot of data, but it's taken 4 points and condensed it all into an equation that will solve problems for infinite points. Now, let's see what the part B is asking us. It says, use the regression equation to determine the cost of the rental if the van was driven 65 miles. Okay, so once again, this is my X, this is my Y, right? So they're saying, find the cost, find Y when X is 65, right? So basically they're saying find, not W, find Y. Find Y. They're finding Y. So I just need to find that exact point on my graph. Okay, so how do I do that again? So let's see. I've got this graph going right through, right? We know we could probably press trace and like move along, trying to find that 65, but again, it's too hard to do. So I'm not even going to do that anymore. I've shown you that it doesn't really work, right? So I'm not going to use that at all. I'm always going to use second trace, press value, and that lets you put in any value of X that you want. We wanted 65. This is a nice, perfect, clean way to do it. So we get a cost of 312.5. So that's it. Okay. So Y equals 312.5. But I'm going to be a little, this is a word problem, right? It's an application. Whoops, sorry. So it's better to say the cost 312.5, right? You have to use the appropriate units when the van is driven 65 kilometers. Okay. Hi, Yusuf. Yes, it's in, look in the PDFs. look under the booklets tab right on the top, the page booklets, and then just see if you can open it up. Let me know if you can open it up or not. Okay, use the regression equation to determine the cost of the rental if the van was driven 225. Okay, so if the van is driven 225 miles, well, let's try. Okay, let's see. Second calc value 225. And I get an error message this time, right? Okay, I'm going to try it one more time. There's my graph. Second calc value 225. And I get an error again. I did everything the exact same. So, sorry, let's do one more time. It says invalid. So what that means is we did have this problem yesterday. Do you remember that we adjusted our windows? I only allowed my graph to give me answers for X values up to 100. This time the X is 225. So I just have to adjust my windows. It's not really an error. It's just a math setting. So basically they're saying to find Y when X is 225. Okay, and I'm going to write this in red. Note, we have to change our X max setting in Windows. That's all that it means. So you'll get this error message probably pretty frequently at the beginning because you'll forget. And what I should have done, I could have read through the whole question, but I tend not to do that. So, and I don't think an average student does that either. I think you kind of approach it question by question. So if I would have read it the same way that a student would approach it, and the student would probably run into an error message. So that's why I wanted to do it this way. So we have to change our Xmax setting in Windows. Change Xmax to, well, let's see. I have to go to 225, so I may as well make it a little bigger. Let's just change it to 250, okay? All right, so if I clear out of here and I go to Windows, I just have to adjust this one. Let's go 250. The graph does change, right? Because you've changed, anytime you change your axes, it's going to make the graph steeper or shallower. Let's try this again. Second calc value, 225. The last time I got an error message, right? This time I actually get a cost. So most of the errors aren't really errors, especially if you get it halfway through a question. If you've been answering the question correctly without any errors and all of a sudden you get an error, it's probably due to your windows. Okay, so $712.50. So let's just record that. Y equals $712.50. Okay, the cost is $712.50. The van is driven 225 kilometers. Okay. So I don't know, I see there's someone else listening. I just want to hear from Yusuf if you found the PDFs. If you could let me know that would be great. If not, I'll just post them again or I can email you. I have your email. Again, as I said, at the beginning of this video, and I know that you might have joined late, but as I said at the beginning of this video, I realized that some people didn't make it in and grab the necessary software they needed, either the app for the computer or the app for their phone. So I'm trying to find a way. I've gone into my files, my work files, but they're not transferring very easily because they're, I just think the way that they are encrypted. So I'm doing my best to figure out alternate ways so that you can do this even if you don't have the graphing programs. So I'm going to leave that with you right now. I don't know if Yusuf's still on the line, but if you are, Yusuf, can you tell me if you found the PDFs? And I'll just wait a little bit. And I guess I wouldn't mind, maybe I'll try and touch base with each one of you and just see what your technological capabilities are at home. Like if you do have maybe you have the graphing calculator program from a friend of yours that took it. If you do know, well, if it would only be if you're living with someone else who took applied math, they might have it still on their phone because we can't really visit anymore. But I'm doing my best to try and figure out alternate ways. So hopefully by Monday, I'll have another program. And it might just be that I kind of do 2 classes. For every lesson, I do 2 classes, one with graphing calculator and one with Desmos. And I might have to do that too, because Desmos is a little more easy to access. So if I don't have any other questions, I think I'll end the stream today, and then I'll upload these files, and I will be in touch with you all on Monday. Remember, I have a resource period at 10 o'clock. Just check for the Google link, and hopefully maybe I'll see you there. And if not, have a wonderful long weekend. Try and relax a little bit. I know it's very stressful, and I know you're doing the best that you can, just like I'm doing the best that I can. So hopefully we'll be able to. Okay, so Yusuf, go to the class blog. Do you know where the blog is? Okay, so go to the class blog and just go to the home page. Okay, good. Okay, so you found it. And all the assignments that I post are on that other tab called. If anyone has any, and Yusuf, I am trying to download. I couldn't email the program for you, the ROM that you needed, so I'm trying to figure out another way to deliver it to you. It might take me a little while to figure something out, but I'm going to try. In the meantime, you could try to get the open source software. That might work, right? When you download Wabbit Moo on your phone through Google Play, you can try looking for open source software, but I will try and get something through to you for next week. Okay, if that's it, I don't see any more questions. And remember, you can always email me. And I will be talking to you on Monday then. So try and find some peace and quiet over the weekend. Your assignment, try and work through assignment 3 now, okay? Those people who are listening with technology. There are 5 questions, so it will give you lots and lots of practice, which is really important for entering data, like clearing your calculator out, entering the data in, going through all the steps to get the regression equation. The big thing is getting the regression equation, right? Once you get the regression equation, you can just put in any value for X that they give you to work with. Now, sometimes, as you saw the last example we did, you might have to go back in and adjust your windows, but really it's all about entering the data in, following the steps on page 13 to get the regression equation. Once you have that regression equation and you have that line going through your data, you know you've done, okay? All right, so I'll leave that with you. Okay, Yusuf, I just saw your note. Okay, that doesn't work. I am going to keep working on a solution for you, okay? So give me till Monday and if I find something before Monday, of course, I'll email it to you. I'm trying to get a file that would work for you. I've got a couple of other ideas and I'm going to play around with them. So hopefully I'll have something for you this weekend, if that's okay. All right. And if that doesn't work, figure something else out. All right. So happy Friday, everyone. And I will be talking to you soon.